Big thanks to EA and the Creator Network for inviting me to check out Season 15 a little bit early. Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. TimProVision here. Welcome back to the channel, or welcome if it's your first time around here. I was fortunate enough to get a sneak peek at Apex Legends Season 15 to see that brand new map, Broken Moon, and a handful of other very exciting changes that are on the way to Apex Legends. I unfortunately cannot talk about Catalyst quite yet because I don't want to go to Respawn or Apex Legends jail, but you should absolutely know just how absolutely she is. But in all seriousness, stay tuned for more. We've kind of known for a little bit now that we were going to the moon of Boreas because we did have a handful of leaks and teasers that have been going around. If you don't know yet, this is actually tied into Seer, and we did get a first glimpse of this back when he came around. Plus, we could even see this brand new moon map from the Encore Arena map, which is a pretty neat little thing that Respawn has been hinting at for a while. Respawn also stated that they started working on this map all the way back at around Season 8 or so it's definitely been in the works for a minute now. If you are a lore junkie, a meteor actually crashed into the moon 26 years ago and set in motion some sort of prophecy with Seer being born, and in turn, lunar expeditions were sent to the moon to figure out how to solve these issues on the moon, and in order to have the moon be more habitable, they began terraforming and creating atmospheric stations. All of this is of course expensive, which means a deal was struck to get the Apex games to the moon so they could fund some money to provide the research and development of those areas. As you can see, and with everything in Apex, the lore is pretty deep when it comes to the brand new map, and the team at Respawn really wanted to push themselves with this brand new map, which means they took into account everything that they have developed in the past. This means Kings Canyon, World's Edge, Olympus, and of course Storm Point. All of these maps had influence on this new map, and they took what worked and what didn't work from these maps and implemented it into the new map. They also reassured us that it's truly its own unique experience, which I think is good. It's going to mean we are going to get something fresh and hopefully exciting. When it comes to the design of the map, the ideology was to really look at the dark side versus the light side of the moon, or heaven and hell, so they can have these complementary or contrasting areas to one another, which sounds pretty interesting. And they specifically mentioned the light side having these pink skies with lily flowers, and the dark side being this hellish type environment that you really don't want to be in. They didn't say specifically that there's going to be features, but they did state that they looked at how gravity works on this new map, which could mean that we're going to get some sort of maybe anti-gravity or other interesting features. They didn't go into specifics of this, but I thought it was interesting that they did mention this. They also mentioned that they specifically took a look and deep dive into the African culture, which was the basis of Boreas as well as Seer in his trailer back from Season 10. Boreas is the planet near the moon, and it definitely is going to be representational of that, and honestly, based off what they showed us, it looks pretty awesome. It's going to be a beautiful map, and the art team really knocked it out of the park with this one. I'm sure you are wondering how big is that new map, and I am happy to say that it's a little bit larger than World's Edge, which means we're not going to get a massive map like we did with last year with Storm Point. The team at Respawn really did look at how a map works in Apex, and those initial drops specifically they took a look at. We all know that a map like World's Edge or Fragment Edge, everyone just piles into Fragment, and most of the lobby is dead within the first few minutes of the game. There's a couple things that they did introduce to combat this. One is going to be those zip rails that we saw in the initial teaser last week. Zip rails are a new type of transportation that do function similar to zip lines, but you do travel much faster than them, and you can also travel in a non-linear fashion, meaning they do turn. This also means that you won't have perfect gun accuracy when you are on them, so you can't just hop on the zip rail and beam everyone that is down below you. And because they do move much faster, in general, it looks like aiming is going to be a little bit harder to do on them as well. The main goal Respawn did have, though, was to challenge how a drop works or needs to work. Since these rails can travel substantial distances, you can drop much further away at certain locations, hop onto the rail, and travel much greater distances quite quickly. I can already tell you that's going to greatly increase the speed of play, and if anything, you might be able to rotate super late now since you can just hop on those rails and get across the map pretty quickly. They did state that the rails do have audio and other sort of features to notify players that you are approaching when you are on them, which is going to be good. You're not going to be able to just jump on the rail and hop onto players without them having any idea. And specifically, they did mention that there is going to be some sort of level of risk reward that players will need to take into account when you do hop on the rail, which is also good. And they also mentioned that you can kind of like joust players. If you're coming from opposite ends, you can kind of shoot at each other as you are flying through the rails at one another. And it sounds like it's going to make a lot of good highlight moments. Another really nice thing that is coming to this new map is they really changed how POIs work by making the typical point of interest on Broken Moon much larger than the other maps in the game. Specifically, the goal they stated was to have a much healthier option of landing spots. So if you are having multiple teams go to one POI, it sounds like it's going to be a lot bigger. You're going to be able to spread out a little bit more, which means you can just have a little bit more options in how you want to play the game. If you get good loot, you can run across the POI and take those fights. If you don't get the greatest of loot, or if you are trying to survive, if there's a lot of teams around, you can't back out of there because the POIs are going to be large enough to create some sort of separation. But don't worry, if you are a hot drop, smaller POI, sweaty POI dropper, this is still going to be in the game, and they did state that you are still going to have this option if you are trying to play that way. We do have a few more things to talk about, but let me know down in the comments what you think of the new Broken Moon map so far. For me, I'm very excited that the map is a little bit smaller than Stormpoint was. I'm more of a pub player, and it sounds like this Broken Moon map is going to be a little bit more accessible for you to get across the map, so you can really just kind of have more play options and make it a little bit more of a fun pub experience. My biggest concern, though, is really just hoping that the rails are well balanced and third parties aren't going to get kind of crazy. Having multiple people come from those rails from different spots across the map, they are able to just hop on them and get to you like instantly. It could be pretty busted and pretty frustrating, but it does sound like they did balance them pretty well. We'll have to wait and see. I can confirm that gifting is coming at the start of Apex Legends Season 15. Any item that has a buy gift box on it in the menus is going to be transferable to someone on your friends list if they have been on the friends list for 2 weeks. You can only use Apex coins for this, so no buying event items with crafting medals and then gifting it to other players. And I'm also very happy to confirm that there are no region locks on this, which is awesome. If you have players across the world and you want to send them something, you can do that. They didn't share too much else when it comes to gifting. It sounds like it's going to be fairly small, fairly basic when it does first come to the game, and then they're going to expand upon it, which makes sense. You don't want to implement something that's too large if we as the community don't really like it that much. The more customization in Apex is always good, and having additional ways to express yourself and your character is great. We recently got revamped healing animations and the sounds, and in turn, it seems like this was intentional because we are getting stickers in Apex. Some aren't going to really care much for this. It sounds pretty cool to me. Basically, you're going to be able to put some stickers on your healing items, so as you're popping those healing items, you can see your stickers on them. This is really just another way to express yourself and your customization, which is good. There's no negative off of this, so I am happy to see them come into the game. At the end of our session, we did have a brief Q&A session where we could ask questions and the Respawn developers would answer them. For starters, we did talk about how Broken Moon is in relation to Stormpoint, and they stated that it's definitely not as vertical as Stormpoint. They stated that Stormpoint's really kind of like a king of the hill. You're constantly going up the mountain or down the mountain. In this map, Broken Moon is a little bit more level, which I think is good. You won't have really quite as many variations in height. I'm actually a fan of Stormpoint. I think it's a really good ranked map, and I actually do think it's a pretty good like competitive map to watch players on it, but it's not really that great of a pub experience. And I do think that the variation in heights is probably one of the main causes for this. Additionally, there was a question asked how many POIs there are. There's 16 POIs on Broken Moon map, but Respawn did state the fact that some of these POIs are double the size of the POIs from other maps, so it sounds like they're going to be pretty big, and it does make sense since the map is a little bit larger than World's Edge. We did talk about cross progression, and we got the same response as we did last season. Nothing new to report on this. Apparently it's a technical nightmare and challenge that the team is trying to get through. It does seem like this 2021 and then promised to be in 2022 feature is not coming in 2022. Big sag on this, but I kind of understand. It does sound like it is a technical nightmare to bring multiple players on different platforms together, even though some other games have kind of mastered this. I do understand that is pretty hard, so we'll have to wait and see what comes out next year. It was asked if we could expect Control or Gunrun or other LTMs to make a full-time appearance in Apex, and they did state that nothing is planned at the moment, but they did go the extra step in stating that they are really focusing on the Battle Royale, which is interesting. I'm a little bit reading between the lines. It did seem like we could have some sort of BR mode on the way. I could be wrong in that, and it could be them just kind of innovating in what we have right now, but it seemed odd that they took the extra step and specifically stated this. I am going to share with you the map rotation, but first, hit that like button and drop a smiley emoji in the comments if you are still here watching this video. Both of these greatly help support the channel, and it's free. This season, we can expect the pub maps to be Broken Moon, Olympus, and World's Edge, with our first rank split, of course, being that brand new map, Broken Moon. Subscribe for more content that is always on the way. We have a lot of exciting stuff that you won't want to miss later this week and, of course, next week. Check out this video to not suck at Apex. I'll see you in the next one.